Hey everybody, I am Joe Marcello, joined as always by my bandit brothers, Orrin Phillips
Hey, everybody.
and Mike Farah.
Hola, benditos.
Well, it is that time of week. It's Wednesday, and if you're not watching Spider-Man Homecoming Far From Home, gonna get home soon because I think it just came out on digital on Tuesday, hopefully you're listening to us. And with that being said, we're bringing you another grand slam of an interview, folks. We're bringing you our interview with none other than Jimmy Palmiotti. All right. Now look. This is another one of those. Holy crap, Orrin, you really got him, and he did, and we spoke to him. And what I loved about him is a lot of stuff, but specifically the work he did with his wife on the women of DC characters. So specifically Harley Quinn, Starfire, Power Girl. Great stories, great artwork.
Yeah, he's somebody who, in this day and age, has such a loyal fan base. Like, whenever he puts out a new project, people are genuinely excited. His work is always stellar, and he was just an absolute pleasure to talk to.
Yeah, Jimmy really came onto my radar around the time of Marvel Knights. That pivotal storyline turn of events when Marvel was just coming out of bankruptcy. Coincidentally, that's when I was at Marvel, had my short stint there, and it was really this huge turnaround for Marvel at that point, and I was excited to play a very small role, but to Jimmy's big role, working with Joe Quesada and kind of relaunching some of these characters. Anyway, let's get to it. This is Jimmy Palmiotti.
So many amazing characters, so many great stories. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. My pleasure.
I'm going to ask you the same question we ask all of our guests.
Okay.
How did you get started in comics, and how did you end up in the comic book business?
So when I was a kid, I have two older brothers and one younger brother. So 4 boys growing up in a tiny, tiny house in Brooklyn, and comic books were everywhere. My older brothers had them laying around. My uncle was a barber, so he had a barber shop and he had stacks of comics in it. And it wasn't like now it is a billion channels on your TV and cable and that. It was basically very little TV for kids to watch. And so I was constantly reading or drawing, and I was doing both. I was reading and drawing. So it's only natural. When I was younger, there was Superman comics and there was Archie's and horror. And it was probably like when I was like 12, I started actually collecting, and I used to trade with my friends in school books. But I also we had a Salvation Army right near me in Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. And they used to rope up a couple of pounds of comics, and it would be like $1, and it would be like a stack like this high, right? And but the guy would put rope on one end and then rope on the other, so all the books were damaged, But I bought the first pack, and I told the guy, I said, if you put them in a box and don't put the rope around them, I'll buy them all day long from you. And so we started doing the box of comics was a couple of bucks. I'm gonna have like 100, 200 books. I wasn't allowed to pick through them. They were whatever potluck, but this was 1974, 73, 74. So I had comics from the 60s, 50s, and early 70s in this box of two. And I used to get, like every week, I'd take a box of a couple of hundred of these. I'd flip through them, see what I didn't like, see what I wanted, and then I would trade with my friends. Because if I needed Daredevil 4, I would trade 3 of these new books for them. This is before like there was a real value associated with the books. That like all my friends and I, we wanted to read them, and then we wanted to make sure we had every issue. So that was all we cared about, not the condition, not anything like that. And then like typical Brooklyn, we had a stoop in front of my house, and me and my friends would bring their comics, and we'd sit there and we'd read each other one. We'd say who's stronger and who's faster and all that kind of stuff. So I grew up around that, and then at the same time, I was always drawing. So I would copy the drawings in the comics, and I would do my own drawing. My friends would like, oh, draw me Hulk, lifting up a car, and do Superman flying over a building. And I did that. And, my older brother was an artist too. He was much better than me, but he kind of quit art. And while I was going to high school, my first year of high school was 9th grade in the high school called Midwood High School in Brooklyn. And one day I came in and They called me to principal's office, and in there they gave me 2 subway tokens and $5 bill, and they said, you're going to go into this school in Manhattan and take a test. And it was the High School of Art and Design, which was an art high school. So, they obviously called my parents to make sure it was okay for me to do. So I took the subway into Manhattan, took a drawing test, and then by the end of the year, I made it into the High School of Art and Design, and that's where I went from 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And the other guys in school at the time were like Joe Jesko, Mark Texera was in my grade, Dennis Cowan was another guy in there, that came out of it. So I went to high school and we had cartooning classes. So while I was there, I wanted to do comics, but when you go to art high school, you have to take everything, right? Not only your math and your history, you have to take painting, sculpting, all this kind of stuff, because they want you to find the art that you really want. I knew the whole time I wanted to do comics, but and then when I was in 12th grade, my teacher asked me if I wanted to do background inks for an artist he knew, an inker he knew, who lived in Queens. And I went out to Queens, and it was this guy named Chick Stone, who was happened to be Jack Kirby's inker way back when, but he was an older gentleman at the time. And he was inking Frank Robbins on the Invaders. I remember it was like Invaders 41. I did background inks on some of the pages. But he fired me in a matter of a day or two because he didn't like what I was doing. He told me it looked too much like a photo, and he said it needed more outlining because Frank Robbins only did breakdowns, like sketches instead of finished pencils, and that lasted not very long. And then I started ghosting inking while I was in high school for guys like Dave Simons and Armando Gill, and I worked on this is gonna rack your brains a little bit. I inked stories in Time Bomb. No, I'm sorry, not Time Bomb. It was a Time Warp. It was a DC 100-page science fiction comic, and I was inking guys like Don Newton and all these different artists. But I was ghosting. I never got my name on the credits, and then I worked on the Howard the Duck magazine, the first issue of the magazine. I was inking Gene Colan and doing wash. While I was in high school, I was bringing home these pages, and the guys I was ghosting for were pretty poor. And that's when I decided I need to go into advertising instead of comics. So I didn't get back into comics till around 8 or 9 years later, because I went into advertising to make a decent living, which I did. And it wasn't until later I figured out, all right, I'm going to try comics again. And I hooked up with Mark Texera, who was drawing and inking Punisher and Ghost Rider monthly for Marvel. If you remember, it was 91. The new Ghost Rider series started and Punisher Warzone started. Mm-hmm. And so I helped him until I started picking up work from Marvel, because I was up in the office all the time. I was the guy that would drop off Xeroxes of my work, pencils and inks. And eventually, because I was there, they started handing me work all the time. And I never missed that. So in my, how many years, I don't even want to count, I've never missed a deadline on a book, inking and writing. I've never missed a writing deadline, but I've never missed an inking deadline. So I wasn't the best inker. I was surrounded by guys like Al Williamson and Klaus Janson, and I was just trying to learn from those guys, Tom Palmer, and these were my heroes. And but I was a guy that was dependable, and if they handed me a book and said I need it next Thursday I was in that morning and handed them the book back. And what I learned eventually was the editors don't really want to work that hard, so they just hire people that can get the work done. And I've been working ever since. So that's a long origin story.
No, that's great. That's great. I always find it interesting because, people such as yourself, the creators, they always have such interesting, paths that they've taken. And I find it interesting because as collectors, there comes a point where you start collecting, you're into it, and you move away from it for whatever reason. Life, school, girls, right. And then you find your way back to it, and it's just it just goes full throttle, at that point. And do you have those comics that you initially collected or had?
Yeah, I actually I handed a bunch to CGC half a year ago because I had them sitting in boxes. They were bagged and they were in acid-free boxes, so they weren't getting destroyed, but they were I had stuff like FF1, and I had like Spider-Man 1. They're horrible condition. Like we're talking about 2.0 or whatever. They were very well-read books. But I had a bunch of my old comics, and I had like Superman number 25 and 26, like Action Comics 30, I think. And so I had like stuff because I when I was younger, I liked the Golden Age stuff, and it was only, you can buy them for like $5, $6, but they were always in horrible shape when I bought them.
But that doesn't matter nowadays. I mean, people are selling fragments of paper from those comics, and they are selling.
Well, there is definitely an ass for every seat. I don't know if I'd want a fragment, I would want a fragment of like a page, like original art, but I don't know if I'd want a fragment from an actual comic.
It's just ridiculous. There's always someone to buy that.
But I took all of them, and I was doing a signing at CGC, which is down in Florida, not too far from me. And they said, if you want to bring some of your own collection, we'll put it, we'll grade it and put it in the thing. So I was like, cool, because I got stuff that's, I got also Sensation comics, like number 8. I had like a lot of odd books, right? So I brought a stack, and they put them in there. They it took a little while, but they got them all back to me. And I feel like, I've read them over and over, right? So I feel like I have them in a place, at least they won't get destroyed more, because I honestly, every time I took them out of the bag, they would like flake or, So other people hate CGC. I kind of like it because it's kind of protecting a lot of my crappy comics. I still had them. I of course over the years I've gotten, like, I originally had a copy of FF1 that I bought from a comic store in Brooklyn. It was called My Friend's Bookstore, and it was on Flatbush Avenue. And if you can go back in a time machine and walk in this place, all 3 of you guys' heads would explode because it had everything. And I remember I went to buy a copy of FF number 1, and he had a box like of around 30 of them. Okay. And he put them on the counter, and I picked the best one, and he charged me $60 for it, which was ridiculous, like too expensive. But he said, look, that's my best one. Like right now, it would have been like a 9.6 or something if it was.
Wow.
And I remember when I was 16, I got my driver's license. And I took that FF1 and I sold it for $1,000, and I bought a really beat up Dodge Dart with it. And that was my hotel on wheels for like the next 3 or 4 years, which, look, I don't regret anything, because that car, I had a lot of good times with that car. But if I had that copy now in the shape it was in, it was insane. When I bought it, it was insane. Like, it was $60. I had to shovel snow for like 2 days to make the money to buy that copy of FF, but I really wanted it, and
builds character.
Yeah, and then I sold it and got a car, so that was cool.
Look, still have the car? No.
But I still have the beat up copy. I have the beat up one that was my reader's copy. But I don't have a ton of comics. Like I said, I used to have a lot more. I try to keep one of every book I do. Like, I have a dresser over there that has one copy of everything, but not really the stuff I ink too much unless it's in a trade, because some part of me is like, if I want it, it's out there. What am I going to do? I don't look back at it, because I look back at it and I want to fix everything that I didn't do great. So it's hard to look at the art style. And then I don't read my old comics, because I already have enough. Like, I literally have, my brain is like a full parking lot, and I really need to move some cars out of the lot to make room for new ones. So I can't go backwards. Like, I don't have that. Collectors like to go backwards, right? Because they want to get the stuff they gave away, or they want to relive it. I personally can't do it creatively, because if I go back, I start wanting to refix and rework stuff. It's sort of like Coppola going, hey, I want to re-edit The Godfather. I totally get how that brain works for that, because whatever they're watching, they're saying, I should have got that arm out of that frame over. I completely get it. But as a rule, I know, like, I'm older, so I need to keep working on my own IP and new ideas. So I tend not to spend too much time in the past.
Fair enough.
Is that why there are like 8 different versions of Apocalypse Now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I saw the one that was in the theater they re-released, and I saw it the next. I had a birthday party, and the next day that was my request to see it. and I love it. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. You know, Apocalypse Now is just crazy.
The re-edited Godfather of 3 was not needed.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, that was just a waste of time. But remember, the re-edited with extra footage of 1 and 2 was a pretty good set.
That was good. I watched that recently, about 6 months ago.
Yeah, and it was my sequential order. Right?
It was my first time seeing those movies in completion in years, and I was like, wow, these movies are awesome.
I'm in the middle of the audiobook, so I'm gonna wait to finish that and then go back to the movies and do the extended ones or the.
Well, I think the extended Godfather 1 and 2 is wonderful because they put them in sequential order.
Yeah.
They started in Italy and then they go up.
Right.
And I think that was terrific. I thought that was because they added a good hour and a half worth of footage that I actually worked pretty well. But you know, I'll tell you a quick story. I was years ago. I went to the Quesada Museum in Pennsylvania, and you have to call there, and then they'll open it up for you. And I went in, and it was Ellie Quesada, Frank's wife, and you know, giving a little tour of the place and everything. And I was talking to her. She asked me where I was from, and she goes, "Oh, Frank's from Brooklyn. Do you want to come by the house? He's been kind of down. You want to come by the house and hang out with Frank a little bit?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And and I went to the house, and and I went into his studio, and he was painting the Vampirella 1 cover. You know, the one that Frank Frazetta did. He was painting out her red suit because
Wow.
and I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I never liked that suit. And I always pictured her naked, so I'm painting the suit out, right?" And so, you know, there's a certain amount of brains that their brains are exploding, right? But in the end, it is Frank's painting, right? He's allowed to do whatever he wants with it. But I was like, my heart was going, oh no, he's like changing it so it's not the same. But I'm like, well, she is naked, so that's kind of cool too. It was a very torn thing, but it was then I realized, like, well, the artist's allowed to do whatever they want with their stuff, you know, and it's fair game. You know, even when I sell original art I did, sometimes before I give it to somebody, I tweak it a little bit. I'm like, I always wanted to finish that hand a little better. And they will look at me like I'm nuts. And I'm just like, no, it's my art. It's okay. I can do that, you know. And anyway.
As an inker, as a young inker, what you got to work with, you know, like you said, Mark Teixeira, was a very distinct style. How did you approach that going into the project?
You know, with all of the guys that I've inked, and it was, you know, back then when I started, it was like Rick Leonardi, Mark Teixeira, was a whole bunch of guys. My job was to sit with them and ask them what they wanted to look like. And with Mark, he would show me pages, and he said, "If you can do it like that." I remember I had I did an amalgam, one of those amalgam books, and it was Captain America and then it was Sergeant Rock, and you know, it was like that smashed together. I think it was something like Man of War or something like that. It was a Captain America. It was Dave Gibbons and Mark Waid. Dave Gibbons does breakdowns. He did breakdowns, and like what breakdowns were, like little sketchy things. Like sometimes you saw the guys in the background that just had their name, like a circle with their name on it. And I saw a derby, and it had a derby, and I knew, okay, that's that guy. So with each artist, I try to look like what they want. You know, so if I remember I did an issue of Punisher Warzone over John Romita Jr. because Klaus Janson couldn't do it. And I just inked it as if I was Klaus. I used some of his line weights and everything. Nobody even noticed I did that book. And I felt like, because the books, it's not about me. As the inker, I have to make the artist happy. And that was always my focus. Is if the artist is happy, that means I'm going to get more work from the artist. And that's why for like a good 10, 15 years, I had artists, like I had 3 books a month steady. Like I just had so much work because guys were like saying, "Can you give it to Jimmy? Because he knows what I want," you know, like that kind of thing. And yeah, so I mean, so my job, I think, was to be invisible, although I'm not, because if you look at like Joe Quesada inked by me, and then you look at Joe inked by Danny Mickey, it's 2 different things, you know. So it's just my perception. I grew up with the Fazettas and the Al Williamsons and the Barry Smith and the Mike Kalutas and the Fazettas. So my line weights are very much brush, a lot of brush, minimal pen. Now it's magic. Now it's markers. You know, now it's markers and technical pens and stuff like that. But I used a lot of brush. I did a lot of brush work, And that's a little bit of a lost art these days.
You still do pen? I'm sorry to cut you off, guys. You still do pen to paper versus the
I do have a 17 right here.
Yeah.
I have a big one here. I use that to when somebody colors my books, I give them notes on the actual art, on the actual project. But no, I still use brushes. I have some brush pens, so we take shortcuts. Like this is a pen that's a complete brush. And then I have like a world of brushes I use that I still have around, but I don't ink that much. I mean, I've only done in the past year, I did a couple of pages for Dennis Cowan for the milestone stuff, but I don't really put it out there that I'm looking for inking work. I'm not really. Once in a while, I get like the last cover I got was Darwin Cook years ago. He just said, "You have to ink this," and threw it at me, and then stole my vodka. He lived right near me, so he was always over here. So I don't do the inking as much. I have, as a matter of fact, when I do ink something, there's a certain amount of people that go, "Oh, you can ink too," and that's what happens when you're, in the business for the last 10 years. I haven't inked that much, but if you were buying comics for a while, I've inked over 1,000 books over, a long period of time. So I've been around.
Yeah, no, we've heard of you. Yeah.
Did you prefer, back in the day, that is, to be doing more of the sort of finishes where you have very loose stuff that you got to do more crafting, or were you more, trying to just kind of, or did you prefer, enhancing someone who had a very fine style?
So any kind of art is confidence, right? So if you have confidence, you feel like you can go in and really do a good job. If a job made me nervous, it would be tough because I'd be worried about while I was working on it. I was inking 2 to 3 books a month. So if I got something that was, I quit inking over a book I was doing. It was something before time, Land Before Time. It was like some miniseries. And they gave me this stuff and with 100 notes. Can you fix this hand? Can you fix this foot? Can you do? And I put it back in the FedEx box and said, you know what? Give it back to the artist, not me. It's not my job. So I didn't mind if it was, if it was somebody. I think I did a Jackson Guys, and like there's certain people I did finishes on, and it was fun. But honestly, time-wise, it was 2 times the work, maybe 3 times the work for me, because I had to figure stuff out. And a lot of the guys, like when I inked Punisher over Steve Dillon, Steve would draw the figures, but he'd tell me, yeah, if you could put some buildings back there, and whatever. And I'd have to sit there and I'd have to, do the buildings and the streets and cars. And so it's actually, you're working a lot more. They gave you like $30 more a page, but that really wasn't, that and a cheeseburger, it wasn't really anything. They would take me at least twice the time to do. So as much as I liked it for some people I felt I had to go in and redraw. There was 1 or 2 books I literally had to go in with an eraser and redraw some of the stuff because the characters looked off character. Punisher looked like didn't look like a young, guy. He looked like a skinny dude, and I'd be like, that jaw's all wrong on Superman. He's got a little thing there, and he's got to be more square. He can't be doughy, like stuff like that. And it depends on the pencil. The guys you've heard of, the pros, know what they're doing, but there's that whole B and C list that are learning as they're doing. And I'd get a lot of those books because I could fix their stuff or fix the eyes. Sometimes the eyes were like, one was high, one was low. And, we look at ears, right? Like where your eye is, the top of your ear lines up with the top of your ear. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people put ears up here or down here. Like there's little tricks that you knew, on faces and legs and, comics are tough. You have to know how to draw everything on Earth. When you do a comic, horses are tough to draw. Everything's, works. So if they weren't doing it right, I had to fix it. That means I had to research and go look at a horse and go look at
hands and feet are always hard to draw. I've noticed.
Hands are easy, right? So
really, because
hand is a circle, right? Hand is a circle. Thumbs here, 4 sticks that way. Just think of it as a circle. Close the sticks. It's always a circle. But the fingers stick out, so it's just dropping the sticks. Foot is a triangle, so it's a foot is a triangle, so it's a foot that sideways or straight. It's a triangle with the ankle and up. if you break down what a person looks like into circles, a head is an egg, right? And then you cut the egg in half. That's where the eyes are. You cut between the eyes and the chin. Half of that is where the nose drops, and then half of that is where the mouth is. And if you look at it mathematically like that, then you can turn the head and draw it and make sure the ear. And remember, the ear, the jaw lines up with the ear line top lines up with the eye. So I literally could sit with you for an hour and a pad and show you how to draw something where now you have an idea of where everything fits. And then you have to worry about, okay, but how about folds and clothing, and how about how to shoot? And it is the most unpaid hard job on earth is comics, because I look at these people, they paint the same 3 flowers and they get gallery shows and they're selling for millions of dollars. Meanwhile, you got some guy who has to draw 100 horses coming over a hill with flying saucers shooting at them, and they're like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, it's like that thing's taking a guy a week.
I got to say, as you were talking, I think Mike and I were having flashbacks of this because we had the same art teacher in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything that you described, I remember this line, that line, the eye line, the ear, jaw. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Now I feel ready, though.
Okay.
I mean, we can just.
You ready now? You ready to draw?
And I'm going to
Let's
start
do it.
breaking into comics.
Yeah, no, let's do it.
I could do a quick class for you guys.
I have one of those posable figures too, with the.
Yeah, those are deceiving, though. Those are deceiving.
That was my wife.
I have one over there too. It's supposed to be 8 heads high, right? Your head times 8 is how tall you are from bottom to top. So whatever your size is of your head, there's another head there, and there's 8 all the way to the ground. That's how you draw a perfectly proportioned character.
I have big shoulders. Sorry. All right.
Remember, people in comics are all perfect. The best school is to just go to the park and draw people sitting around, and that's how you learn how to draw. Actually,
So, Jimmy, you are not the first inker that has turned into a writer. In fact, we've had a couple of interviews of that sort of transition, which makes me curious because we see it much more inkers to writers rather than pencilers to writers. Why do you think that is? What is the transition that makes it seemingly more natural?
I think because I think a penciler has to think super, super, super hard. They start with a blank page. So I think it's sort of like energy. It pulls all the energy out of the brain to do that. Where ink is, it's a relaxing thing. You can listen to music and you can listen to TV while you're inking. So the inker probably thinks about stories and thinks about what they're looking at all the time and how things could be better. I mean, I never thought I would be a writer in comics, but I realized when I started comics, I started reading them and going, boy, what a shitty ending that is, and what happened here, and it wasn't until I started self-publishing with Joe Quesada, we did event comics with Ash and Painkiller Jane. And we're like, oh, I think we could do this. And it became a confidence thing. I remember I was handed Deadpool. It was like my first thing I was writing at Marvel. And they gave me Deadpool for I think 8 issues. And, I read the book and I said, all right, well, I got 6 or 8 ideas, right out of the top of my head that, and I realized okay, this is really easy. I don't understand why this is a hard job. I was but again, I am the guy that has 85 notebooks full of ideas, and I've always been that way, right? So I think like I said, so I think the penciler has a lot of responsibility just putting the pencil down on a paper to write it. I could see where a penciler would hate writing because they want to write something that would be easier to draw, and then it would change their stories. So I could see why that might be a little tough thing to do, because you'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do a crowd scene here, guys drinking coffee in a coffee shop, it's empty, I mean, you might actually start writing to what you can draw, and I don't think you should do that, because I think that's the challenge of drawing. So that might be a reason why, or maybe the brain works differently. I don't know. Look, I've done every job except lettering in comics. I've done coloring, I've designed covers, I've edited. I won an Eisner for editing. I've done every job. And now I'm, with paper films, I put out my own books and stuff like that. I just think I love the whole medium. So I kind of wanted to learn everything, except I suck at lettering. And I know I could do it through a computer, but it's so cheap to get somebody to letter something. Why would I bother? you know. So
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump back. You mentioned already, Events Comics, which you and Joe put together. In mid '90s, I guess.
Yeah, like 94. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to, hear a little bit more about like the genesis of that. I mean, obviously there was a lot of, craziness going on in the industry at that point.
Yeah, Image was starting up and doing their thing, and I was getting a little bored just inking other people's stuff, and I've always had ideas for characters. I remember with Ash, Joe and I were in Chicago doing a convention, and I was taking a shower, and the thought hit me like fireman superhero. I wonder why there's never been a fireman superhero. And I came out of the shower, and I'm like, Joe, is there ever been a fireman superhero? Like, I know there's cops, but like, and we looked, and like there was nothing with fireman. And then my brother Pete, my younger brother, we were trying to come up with a name for a fireman superhero. My brother Pete said, just call him Ash. And I bought him a nice TV for that. I thanked him with a nice TV. My brother Pete came up with that. But like we were just wanted to do a couple of books. I wanted to do a book about a female character, a bisexual female character, because I modeled her after somebody I knew. And I thought, well, Painkiller Jane, like she doesn't have to be busty. She could be like a sport, like more of a sports girl. Especially since Lady Death and She and everything was, boom,
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something a little tougher, a little tomboy looking type character. That's why we have Wrigley and Artie do Painkiller Jane. And we said, yeah, let's try this. Let's see if we can do it. The thing we did that was smart is we would drive up to Wizard and take them to lunch. And eventually we'd get coverage from them. I actually applied a lot of my advertising skills because I was in advertising before comics. So I treated everybody like Wizard, like a client. I would take a client out to dinner and drinks. And then I would say, hey, let us do this layout and let us do something for the book. And there was a time when Joe and I were in like every issue of Wizard for like the 90s. We were in it. It's because we worked very hard to form relationships with everybody there. And where people were going, oh, that's a pain in the ass, I don't want to do that. We would say, oh, we'll do it. We'll take a bunch of people out bowling for a contest. We'll do that. I'll host the Wizard Awards in Chicago. Sure, I'll get on stage and do that. We just did anything we could because we knew that was the only place you were getting press. This was before the internet. The only place you got was CG. No, what's that? Comic Buyer's Guide, right?
Comic Book Buyer's Guide. Yeah.
CBG, right? Comic Buyer's Guide and Wizard Magazine were the only places. Later on, magazines like Combo and Comics Journal sort of like went to the brainy side of comics, and we were like two guys that Joe and I both sat there and said, we got to put our faces on everything. Like we have to make people know who we are and what we're doing, and sort of like to join that boys club. Like you want to be part of what we're doing because this is the cool comics. And it kind of worked. And even when we got offered Marvel Knights, we brought that mentality in because we were like, okay, they're going to have to trust us to try these titles, right? It's not enough we're doing Black Panther, Daredevil, Inhumans, and the Punisher, but we're going to bring like cool teams like Kevin Smith and Tex. Of course, I brought Tex in because that was my high school buddy. And, all these people, and we're going to do something cool, and we're going to spend extra money and do digital coloring, which wasn't being done that much back then. But we branded the books with our faces, meaning this was Jimmy and Joe's Marvel Knights. We even created the Marvel Knights to be separate from Marvel. And that was just stuff I learned in advertising because I used to work for Pepsi Cola and Maybelline, and I worked for Malpaso, which was Clint Eastwood's movie company. I worked for him. I did work for them, and so I knew how to brand stuff. So that was pretty much what the 90s, and then Marvel Knights was the peak of that. And again, before the internet, right? So like Joe and I would do like morning shows. We would do New York morning show, Good Morning America. We've been on shows. We did late night stuff. I started going out, and Joe went out, and we got other people to book us for stuff that you normally would never see comic people on. And we were trying to say comics are cool. Kevin Smith was doing Daredevil, so Kevin would go on the Tonight Show and talk about Daredevil, like, hey, I'm doing this comic book. And, people didn't see that back then. That was like, comics were like the nerdy thing. And Joe and I were like, no, comics are cool. we're cool, so we're gonna sell this as comics are cool. You should buy comics and try them out. And it worked out pretty well, because by the time I left Marvel Knights, they were out of Chapter 11. They were in Chapter 11 when we started, and they were out. And then they got bought by Disney, and the rest is history. But it was definitely, Joe and I kind of going in and saying, we need to brand comics as not nerdy for a while. It's exhausting that everybody thinks it's nerdy or it's for kids. So much so, all our storylines in the Marvel Knights thing. I mean, Kevin wrote a story about religion, Matt religion. Inhumans was all about people that are outsiders trying to get into the regular world. When we picked up Marvel Knights, they were canceling Daredevil and they were canceling Punisher. They were both being canceled. So Punisher, we knew we had to do something bizarre. So we went and made him like, Spirit of Vengeance type thing, crazy thing. And then with Black Panther, because I'm a huge FF fan, I said we need to have a black character representation. Black Panther's a great character. We got Chris Priest to do it, and Joe and I came up with some ideas in that book, and that's why the movie happened, right? So it was an interesting time. I know I'm talking way too much, but
no, you're actually knocking off every question that we have.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said,
we got more. We'll get some color on it, but
and you're literally going in chronological order that we have here, because you just killed.
Right. Well, I'm gonna. You can ask another question. I'll keep going.
No. I wanted to ask, you addressed Painkiller Jane and Ash, because when I started collecting, it was after Death of Superman, and I wasn't seriously collecting at that time. I'm probably until like another year or so later, when Painkiller Jane and Ash were going, and I didn't have a whole lot of disposable income at that time, or very much at all for that matter, but that was a title that I always saw and was fascinated. So I would flip through, when I had the chance to do so. And it wasn't until much later that I actually, caught up with it and read it. And I thought that, man, this is great. And it wasn't until like probably another few years after that it got optioned like for, TV series and stuff like that. And you already addressed, kind of its genesis, which I really appreciate. I wanted to ask, like, what the creative experience was for working on Daredevil. I know you discussed kind of what was behind it, but you're working with really super creative people, Joe Quesada, yourself, and obviously Kevin Smith, who just like oozes comic book awesomeness in my view. Yeah, he oozes. What was that like for you?
So Kevin was making some films in New Jersey, and
as he does.
I don't know how we got connected, but he needed some artwork for Mallrats, and we did a piece for Mallrats. I think it was White Hayton Coon, whatever it was, kind of crazy. Yeah, we did that artwork for him, and we became friends, and then he was shooting Chasing Amy, and the beginning of Chasing Amy and the end of Chasing Amy were at a fake comic convention. Mm-hmm. So he asked us to bring the Event Comics booth to New Jersey in this hotel, and he shot all weekend. And we're in that movie. Yeah, we actually had a speaking role in the movie, and then they cut it out, thank God. But we're still in the movie. You can see me and Joe at some point in it. So we were doing all this stuff for Kevin, like for free, right? And so when we got Marvel Knights, we're like, payback's a bitch, man. He said he loved Daredevil, and we offered it to him. We said, could you do Daredevil for us? I think if we launch with you attached on Daredevil, I think we're going to get the right, because we were trying to find angles to get headlines for the comics. Like it was really tough. Nobody cared about comics, And we thought, getting Kevin on this, we're going to get a lot of press for this, just this book alone, So Kevin decided, he decided to do it. He held up his end of it, a little payback, and we did get the press. But it was, it was a planned thing. Like look, no matter what, we want to do a great book, right? But we needed. When Marvel hired us, they were in Chapter 11. They were going to go out of business or be put up for sale. And them taking us up there, not only taking us in, but giving us the penthouse of the Marvel offices. We got the penthouse on the roof of 387 Park Avenue. You know, we asked for that. They gave it to us. We had lawn chairs and tables outside on the roof. You know, it was crazy. But they were taking a risk with us. And so we felt like that was like the ultimate challenge. Like, we can show Marvel how Marvel comics should be made. Because they were really sucking at the time. They were just knocking stuff out. Marvel was losing, you know, like I said, if you think about it, Daredevil and Punisher getting canceled because the numbers were that low, that's really bad. You know, they're staple characters. So we had something to prove. We were just the right age. Image did that Heroes thing right before us. That's why they were a little reluctant with us, because the Heroes thing didn't work out the way they wanted it to work out. And they thought we were going to do the same thing with Marvel Knights. And we came in and said, no, we're going to make this something different. Like, this is going to get people into comic stores that never bought a comic book before. You know, and that's why we had Black Panther. That's why we had Daredevil with Kevin. We wanted to get people to buy it. And then we knew the way we released it, one every week, each month, we knew we wanted to train people that they have to go in every week to get a Marvel Knights character book. And also, you don't want to miss one of them. Even though they don't cross over, you're going to feel like you want to be completist, you know, because that's me, right? I'm like the collective. The completist is going to want every Marvel Knights book. So we knew that. We got these great covers by J. Scott Campbell and Bruce Timm. And, you know, we got all these guest covers and alternate covers that people weren't really doing them that much back then. And so we were trying to appeal to the collector, because that's me. If you notice on Daredevil 1, you'll see like a little number in our signature, because I think I'm gonna get the number wrong, but I think it was like issue 180 or 181. You'll see in our signature it says 181, even though it's issue 1. We kept numbering it in our signature as if it never ended. Little detail you can, if you look at the comic again, you'll notice that. That's the collector of me, because I hate when they start number 1 again. So my brain was like 184, 185, 186. And so we just was, you know, it was just a time where we really had something to prove. And then we did it. And then, you know, Joe wanted to stay and, you know, work at Marvel. And it was like the complete opposite what I wanted. I didn't want to be a corporate anything. So that's when I just started working everywhere. And, you know, Painkiller Jane, eventually that show came on. I worked on the show up in Vancouver for a while and stuff like that. So it was just like, it was a very good time. And comics were just getting into everybody's brain. A little known fact, the first digital comic ever done was a short story me, Kevin, and Joe did for Daredevil. It's the first digital comic. We drew it on the computer, and it was the first digital comic ever, because Marvel had a whole computer department and nobody used them. And we were like, oh no, the internet's going to be big. We're going to do a lot of stuff on the computers. And we had our message boards, we had everything. So again, you know, looking back, it was a good time. It was just good timing, you know.
Given all the work that you've done on Punisher, what are your thoughts on his various incarnations and evolution over the past few years?
No, I like Garth Ennis's best. I like Garth's Punisher. Welcome Back, Frank is still my favorite book. Okay. Punisher book. I started inking Punisher, so I always loved the Punisher. It's funny that people ask me about the logo, like, hey, did you see they changed the logo? And I said, no. I said, you don't give it away. Punisher should always own the logo. Everyone else is stealing it. And they did the flip-flop. They let everybody else claim it, and then they decided to not publish Punisher. I said, that's the worst. That is the opposite of what I would have done. I would have owned it and said, these guys are copying from us, and we're going to keep coming out with Punisher comics. Screw everybody. But that's me. I don't own $1 billion business, so obviously, you know, maybe they know more than me. No, I love the character because it's a escapist character. It's a wish list. Somebody did me wrong, I'm gonna get a bazooka and blow up their car. It's one of those books that's fun, and it's as fun as the person writing it. So if you have a fun writer in there, it could be fun. If you have a real straight writer, it tends to get a little bit like 1980s Steven Seagal movies, like it's just revenge and who cares. I think Garth was the right person because he had a sense of humor. He could look at something scary, and at the same time, find the funny part of it. And that's why Garth and I probably get along so well. Is we, as bad as something is, we'll find a part to laugh at. It's the guy that falls down the stairs and accidentally shotguns his head off. That's horrible, but it's also kind of funny. So yeah, I've always liked the character. I've written a couple of books. I've inked maybe like 100 Punisher books over the years. I don't like get into the politics of it because it's fantasy. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
It's like when I wrote Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. People are like, "Oh, I don't like your politics." I'm like, "You mean Sam's politics or the human bomb's politics?" I'm like, "It's not mine." I
realize these are made up.
They're made up characters. The embodiment of the United States. Who has?
Hey, when I write Conan, I'm not actually Conan. I hope you guys know that, right?
What? Did anybody vet this guy? Come on.
I am Red Sonja though. But no, it's a funny thing when people do that. I could take it. People can throw stuff at me. I'm like, okay, I'll throw it right back at you.
I got a couple more Marvel Knights questions. One is just sort of a clarification. Did Marvel come to you guys for Marvel Knights, or did you guys pitch this to Marvel?
So I told you we worked Wizard a lot. So Gareb Shamus was a friend. Gareb Shamus met with the guy Joe Calamari, who was the president. That's how we called him, Joey Squid. He was the president of Marvel at the time, and we gave him a mob name, yes. And he was the president, and he was talking about getting somebody in, and actually Gareb recommended me to them, and then I met with him, and Joe met with him, and that's how we got the gig. But we were recommended because they said, he said, for two guys putting out a couple of comics, look how much attention Event Comics is getting. Imagine if they did some Marvel books, and that kind of, and they knew we knew how to package books. So that was half the battle too, because you couldn't just only put together the books, you had to package them. And by creating logos, Marvel Knights had its own logo. And we did a lot of other work that people don't realize within those books.
So I have sort of a personal story because I was working at Marvel during this time. And I'm curious whether you remember Marvel Knights magazine.
I do. There was a bunch of them. There was Ultimate
Comics magazine, and there was Marvel Knights magazine, and it was mostly just a blow-up version of the most popular issues. But then we had about like 8 pages to play with, and we did all kind of interviews and weird stuff going on. So
I remember. I'll tell you why I remember, because they came out and they were over so we published our books and they were later than a year. It was like a year and a half later.
Right. Yeah.
And I walked up at one point to the 11th floor, is it right, or 12th floor, right, or 11th floor?
Yeah, we were at Bryant Park at that point. Right.
Yeah. Oh, you were okay. So you already moved. Anyway, I went up there and I said, how come we're not getting royalties or reprint rate on these magazines? And the people up there said, well, because it's within a year. And we went through the files and it was a year and a half. So Marvel had to cut reprint rate checks for everybody that was in those books. and I was told that that's why they stopped making them, because
Really?
That was the thanks I got from them. They told, one of the guys said, it's because of you getting all your artists paid. That's why we're not doing them anymore. And I'm like, I don't care. I said, you owe my guys money. I said, that's you guys.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for those magazines. It made a couple.
Oh, hey, you're welcome. I'm glad someone remembers them.
I do. I have one. I have one here somewhere. If I really
do you? Awesome. Yeah. Look me up. My name's there, and I don't even remember. We had carte blanche for those 8 pages. We could do whatever we wanted. I mean, nobody was looking over our shoulder. So
that's great.
You may find some weird stuff in there.
No bosses are great. That's the greatest thing. Very cool.
I want to ask a question about your collaboration with Justin Gray, but the one thing I've noticed just speaking with you and in your career is that you seem to find the right people for the right positions in your projects.
Right.
How important is it that you make sure that the people on your team are people you trust and people can get the job done?
They have to earn the trust, right? Number one, and then I'm loyal to them, so this loyalty goes two-way street. And somebody like Justin Gray. Justin was an intern at Marvel Knights, and he kept bringing me like one-page story ideas that were amazing. I remember this one of the first ones he gave me. He said, "What if Galactus was consuming a planet so big, right? He goes into like a food coma. He's absorbing the whole planet, and it's a gigantic planet, maybe like 10 Jupiters big. And he goes into a food coma for like 1,000 years, right? He's absorbing this energy. And in that 1,000 years, these other races of smaller aliens start building on Galactus and create cities. And using the energy, they power their city. And now Galactus is laying in space, and he has cities on it, and there's all characters and their stories in it. And I looked at this thing, and I'm like going, it's so crazy, but it kind of works, It's kind of cool idea. And he kept bringing me stuff like that, And when I finally left Marvel Knights and I left Marvel and started just writing and doing stuff, I actually DC Comics called me up. They said, "You want to do 3 books for us? You want to create 3 books?" I did it. One was The Resistance, one was 21 Down, and another one was Twilight Experiment. And I said, "Yeah, I'll let me call a buddy of mine." And I called Justin, and I said, "You want to write a couple of comics with me?" He's like, "Hell yeah!" And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "We need to do totally original properties," and we did those 3 properties. They never sold very well, but they got reviewed very well, and like we got up to issue 12 with them, which is like a blessing to do, to have something new. But he was a guy we got along great, and I think for years I tried to get Jonah Hex out of DC, and they said that Brian Azzarello claimed it, so Brian Azzarello was going to do it. So no matter how I pitched it, they were never going to give it to me. And then one day I got a call from Dan DiDio and said, Brian Azzarello is going to do his own Western. So do you have a pitch for Jonah Hex you want to send us? And I told Dan, I said, check your mail. I just sent it to you because I had it waiting. And that's how we got Jonah Hex. And then Justin and I worked on Jonah Hex for all those years, I think 5 years worth of Jonah Hex. But I honestly look for somebody much more creative than me. And I look for somebody like, I don't want somebody that likes the same things I do. I want to learn new things. So I don't find somebody like me. I find somebody different than me, because I feel like if I find somebody like me, it's going to get annoying to me eventually. And Justin definitely had different background than me, and we just got along great. And we did a lot of books together. We had a fun run together. We both knew we had to start doing our own things. Otherwise, it was Jimmy and Justin forever. And, it started getting tougher as I was moving around. But I just talked to him today. So speaking of devil, I talk to Justin all the time. Because we defend our copyrights for things we own together too. There's a lot of people out there in comics come out with a title that we already did. And we have to tell them that, there's a 6-issue series. I don't know why people don't understand what a search tool is, but before you name your comic, you might want to type it in, to see if.
What is this Superman I hear about?
Is it Super Duper Man? Can I get away with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go to the library and search the microfiche. You should be able to.
All right, somebody give him a wheelchair and some
I'll take my
Pampers.
walker now.
Adult Pampers.
There you go. So I wanted to ask, since I am a Superman guy, your work at DC, specifically on the women of DC. So Power Girl and Harley Quinn and Starfire, all fantastic. I mean, it's like Harley Quinn is just I don't know where DC would be without her right now. Let's be honest.
That's rich, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. A little tired of seeing her at this point now.
Well, it's like anything, right? How many Batman titles are there right now?
Well, don't get me started about Batman, all right?
My office, not this office here, but my work office is in a comic shop.
That's awesome.
It's a gigantic comic shop. It's called Emerald City Comics in Clearwater, Florida, and it's gigantic. And they do the ordering, and I sit on the floor. I listen to people when the new comic day. I go out and watch everybody talk, and all I hear are people going, "Too many Batman titles." You know what? I don't care about Batman anymore. What else have they got? Like, it's really a conversation that's happening, and I'm laughing, and I'm like going, every week they're announcing another Batman title, and I'm like, I will give Dan DiDio all the credit. When he was editor-in-chief, he made sure there was a Western, and there was science fiction, and there was some horror, and now it's, I just think right now, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot by dumping so much stuff,
We had a chance to talk to Dan, and I asked him, about New 52 specifically, and, that was his response. He wanted to really kind of bring other types of characters and stories to the forefront, which he did. And I think, for all the crap that New 52 received, it succeeded in bringing eyes to characters that normally wouldn't not have been discovered. I know, for as much as I read DC stuff, there's a lot of New 52 that I really enjoyed for that exact reason.
Dan was a great editor-in-chief. He was creators loved him. You can call him, he'd pick up the phone. If you had a complaint, you can yell at him, and he won't hold it too much against you. And he used to be my next door neighbor before he got into comics in Brooklyn.
Oh, that's cool.
He lived right next door. So that's how he got into comics. That's another show. You have me and Dan on. That's a funny show, because we could talk about when we're first getting into comics, how he got into it, because he used to come over my house and steal all my comps.
Oh, see, he didn't mention any of that.
No,
we'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
We'll do that show one day. But as far as the girls of DC, it's when I started working with Amanda. Like, Justin Gray and I got Power Girl. We wanted Power Girl, and they gave it to us, and we just said we're going to do it a little differently. Like, here's how Power Girl's built. Get over it. Now let's get the story going. And the funny thing when we took over Power Girl was, like, I kept asking these questions. DC, where does she live? And they're like, well, and I'm like, does she have a job? And they're like, well, not really. And I'm like, okay, does she have a pet? Well, they put a cat in it. And I'm like, okay, so let's give her an apartment. Let's give her a new job. We have to make this a person before we can make it a superhero. And that was our 12 issues of Power Girl. Of course, with Amanda doing the art, of course, it's appealing, and she can get away with murder. She can get away with stuff guys can't get away with. She can draw sexy women, and nobody's going to give a shit, because that's a woman drawing a woman. And Amanda's always been my secret weapon with that. And then, and so we did that, and 12 issues of Power Girl, and that sold like crazy. And now it's expensive to buy the trades. Like, you just can't get them anymore. They're out of print, Right. And then we did, and then Dan, I was at a retailer get together in Orlando, Florida, and Dan came in, and I said, I'll meet you there and we'll hang out. And he had me talk to the retailers a little bit about what I've been doing. And one retailer said, Deadpool's really big at Marvel. You got like a Deadpool character with Harley. Why don't you do any more Harley comics? And Dan just turned to me and said, you want to do Harley Quinn? Maybe you and Amanda? I'm like, yeah, I'll call Amanda, see if she's up for it. And then we read some Harley Quinn books, and I was like, Amanda and I looked at each other and said, we can't really do a comic where it's just a joke of beating on her all the time, And I said, we went back and said, can we have them break up, her move away from Gotham? Because I didn't want to do another Batman book, to be honest with you. With keeping Harley in Gotham is just a weak thing for me, because it's like she's a secondary Batman character. And I said, if I'm going to write a book called Harley Quinn, I need to get to know who she is, and not just, I find it easy to just have her fight Clayface and have her fight the Batman. Like, that's in every comic, right? So what we pitched was Harley breaks up with the Joker, moves out of Gotham and goes to Coney Island. Makes sense, right? And then she has a new cast of supporting characters. And Amanda said, I want to change the costume because needs a little protection. And she wound up drawing it like a roller derby. And then we went to a roller derby down here and did some research. And Amanda's like, I think I want Harley to look like this now. And she redid the whole thing. And then we handed it to Dan, and Dan's like, all right, it may not last very long, but go for it. You know, we had an expectation of like 8 issues. It might get canceled. Nobody in a million years thought it would take off like it did. And, you know, it seemed like whatever we chose to do was totally in tune with the zeitgeist of like what was going on in the world. The idea that she got away from an abusive relationship. And for us, it was just a natural thing for the character, right? I can't have a book where Joker is an a-hole to her every issue. And again, if that's the case, it becomes Joker Harley comic. And nobody was really developing Harley as a character. So we spent a good, you know, we did 12, 15 issues of Harley. And then we were like done. We were like, they made movies. We met Margot Robbie a couple of times. We went on the set of Birds of Prey. We went to the premiere in New York and the premiere in London. Hung out with her and the cast, you know, at a party. We did some fun stuff. A lot of our stuff was used in the movies. Even in the new Suicide Squad, there's a whole thing with the birds and all that stuff was from our comics. So we're happy we made such a mark on the character. But it's tough when you do a book that long. We created a whole crew of supporting characters, and the minute we're off it, the next crew comes in and they don't use any of the characters we created. And whereas Harley's back in Gotham again, and you know, you just said there's too much Harley anyway, or whatever.
Well, no, you know, it's the, you know, and this is just my opinion, obviously. It's, you know, the corporate entity really just kind of jumping on the bandwagon in that sense, and like they see that Harley is a big draw, and now they want to inject Harley Quinn into as much as they can, which is fine. We had a rule with Harley. When Amanda and I were doing it, she couldn't appear in other books. That makes sense.
Harley's only going to stay in our book. And they said, and then if you need to be another book, we're going to do it. That's why we did those specials and the you know, in the Harley Little Black Book. I knew we had to keep control of the character. Otherwise it was going to be overdone. And if anyone was going to overdo it, my brain set was at least the 2 people that have been working on it are going to stay on it. And that's how they're overdoing it. And, you know, I haven't read the book since, to be honest with you. I like, and I read, actually, we read a couple issues Stephanie did, and it's great. And, you know, and it's classic Harley back, you know, with Gotham and all that kind of stuff. And I just I feel like to me, it's like the character needed to stay away from Gotham even a little longer to make it special. But it seems like everything Batman is what's selling right now. So I get where they have to go to that. And we did, you know, and we created the Harley Ivy. We didn't create it. Actually, we took what Bruce Timm and Paul Dini did and kind of brought it into our book. But we had the moonlighting rule. I don't know if you know the moonlighting rule. It's like the show's really good if Bruce Willis is always trying to get over on the girl. But the minute that he does get over on her, people don't want to watch it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was our thing about Harley and Ivy, is like the tease is there. It could be, it couldn't be, but don't go full. And, you know, people will argue that with me, that it's better now that they're to get whatever. And again, I think it's a different audience right now for the books. But we had that rule because I knew, like, once you do that, like X-Files, you know, is Mulder and, you know, and are they going to get together or not? You don't really, you like the little tease of it, but honestly, the show was about the stories and less about that, you know?
Right.
But there's different opinions on that. Like I said, what they do to the character now is it's their character. We did our say. I think we got a little thing coming up. We did a short story coming up soon that they didn't announce yet. But I feel like we did enough of that character. We made our mark on Harley. So
you guys set the groundwork for her own cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, that was all you.
Yeah, I would say. Amanda even worked on the designs. You know,
okay.
Her and Shane Glines did the designs.
Okay.
For the cartoon, and that was the only thing they involved us in. Amanda did some drawings, and we asked, "Can we be involved with this? It's based on what we're doing," and they were like, "Nope." That's comic books, folks. It's a little heartbreaking on some level, but they want everybody in their place. You only do that. You can't do that. Even though I've written animated movies and stuff like that. Nope, you can't work on a cartoon that we're basing on the character you wrote for the past 6 years. You can't do that.
You weren't involved in the casting of Margot either?
No, but
She
she's
didn't come to you and say
she was perfect.
she was
perfect.
great. Yeah, they nailed it. But
When you meet her, she's sweet. When we first met her, she came up to us after the first Suicide Squad movie and asked us if she did okay. You know, because she's been reading the comics. She goes, I was modeling it after you guys did, and I'm like, you were great. I said, my only problem with the movie is it wasn't called Harley Quinn. Instead, you know, I want a single Harley Quinn movie, not Birds of Prey, not Suicide. One where she's the main character, and we follow her, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. Birds of Prey was fun, but it was a lot of characters going on, you know.
Yeah, there was way too much to manage in that. I mean, not one, you know, a lot of cool characters, but they all kind of needed their own.
There was some wonderful moments in it of her throwing up in somebody's purse, a girl's purse, is one of my favorites. And the egg sandwich, that's right out of our comic, her like looking at food like it's the. There was a lot of fun stuff in it, but it was like the movie should have been called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, not what it was called. You know, a lot of people, a lot of cooks overcooking something, but you know, I thought it was fun. And James Gunn's Suicide Squad, the last one was great. I thought that was a blast.
That was fun.
I could watch 100 of those movies, you know. It's just crazy. Starro was amazing, you know.
The fact that there was a Starro in it, I was like,
what? I can't believe it was in any movie.
And it looked amazing.
It did.
Know?
It really did.
It like jiggled, and it was just great, you know. Yeah. Anyway.
You mentioned Amanda, have such a strong fan base. I mean, fans really, they get excited for everything you guys do. They truly love the work. And I mean, I know a lot of artists and writers have fans, but your guys' fans, like, they're so loyal. It's like an army. What do you think it is about what you guys do that connects so well with the readers?
I think we respect them. I think there's a joy when Amanda and I are working on a book. We're having fun. And I think it actually comes through in the comic that it's silly and fun and light, and everybody's having a good time. I think it comes in through the work, and then when you know, I mean, she's a great artist. She's one of the best communicators. Her artwork is, you don't even need the word balloons. You can see what's going on in her books. There's no getting lost. You know, she was a Joe Kubert student. You know, so Joe taught the best, and so she has that thing about her. Her work is charming and playful. I like to say, in a way, her even her sexy stuff is very much the way Betty Page works for people. Nobody gets really upset when Harley and Ivy are being sexy, or Power Girl's almost falling out of her shirt, or we play into that stuff, right? We have fun with it, but it's done in a way like it's like sort of like Betty Page, how it's not really dirty, it's like sexy cute. And then when we do shows, we do conventions, we make sure we talk to everybody online, and we're very respectful for everybody. We both love the fans, and I think you know, we know how special it is that we're in a position where people would come up to us and be excited to see us. We're fully aware of how unique and special that is, and we don't take it for granted. We try to treat everybody like the respect that they give us, and I think that's where loyalty comes in. Is like you get to know what people want in the characters, and we never destroy characters. As a matter of fact, somebody quoted me saying, when I write characters, I break them, and I fully argued that with them, because I was like, I don't break characters. I look at characters and why it is people like them, and then I try to zero in on that and have fun with it. You know, I don't break them, because they say, well, you know, when we were doing books for DC, Amanda and I had our own universe. Like, you know, Harley would have Power Girl in it, would have Terra, would have, you know, Atlee was in the book, and Starfire. When people read Starfire, you know, all of a sudden Power Girl's there. We did do that. We felt like we had our own little universe, but it didn't hurt the sales. I mean, people liked it because they felt like, oh, it's a familiar place in the DCU. It's like the fun, light part of the DCU.
Yeah.
and it's a shame because we pitched after Dan left, we pitched a couple of series. We pitched 2 or 3. We pitched the Power Girl book that they had no interest in. We pitched the Zatanna book they had no interest in, and then we pitched a Batman spin-off book that was very bizarre. But they had no interest in us doing anything else for them except Amanda doing covers. So that was our relationship. So that was like, okay, well, they're not interested in. I mean, we had a thing with Power Girl and the Super Pets we wanted to do, and they were like, nah, they just didn't feel it would sell. And I'll argue that till the day I die, it would have sold just fine.
I mean, they're making a movie. So
this was like a couple of years ago when we wanted to do a thing with Power Girl where she was under the weather. She got some cosmic cold or something. And all the superheroes had to leave Earth to fight a battle in another galaxy. So they dumped all the Super Pets in her apartment for her to look after the Super Pets. So the book was 6 issues of Power Girl and all the Super Pets in one little apartment in Brooklyn, and her trying to control them. And they didn't, they were like, yeah. Well, that's the funny thing is, right, because Power Girl's like very stoic and very, and the pets would drive her insane, but she's got a big heart kind of thing. And that's why when we have Harley and Power Girl together, we see the big sister come out in Power Girl, and that's how we look at the relationships with the characters in the books. We try to humanize them as much as we can because that's what connects with the audience.
My daughter loved, and she's not a big comic book collector, but Harley Quinn was her jam, and she read all your Harley Quinn issues. So I mean, she was. Great. I had to buy her all the mallets and the bats and all the, props that went along with it. But
we didn't write her as a killer, so we wrote her a little differently. We wrote her as like if she did kill somebody, it was because they had to come in. But she she's a psychiatrist, and she's supposed to look at something differently than we would look at it. Like a problem, it should be analyzed and dealt with, not shot and beaten. And so that's how we handled the character. Like she would, she had a lot of heart. And even though she screwed up all the time, her heart was in the right place. And that's what connected with the people that read it, I think.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a really great character. I mean, you don't see a character like that it was, originally just written for the cartoon.
Yeah.
And I don't, as a small character nonetheless, and it's just huge. I mean, like you said, DC would have far less money without it right now.
Yeah, Jim Lee called it the 4th pillar character. We liked when he did that. We were like, good, we want more money. We want our page rates to go higher.
Where can first of all, what do you have coming up next, more specifically?
So we have the last couple of issues of Red Sonja. We do it for Dynamite. It was a 10-issue series. Moratat did the art on it. So I think number 7 or 8 comes out in a couple of weeks, and it's Amanda and Jimmy taking Red Sonja and doing our best Roy Thomas, because that's the Red Sonja we love. Mm-hmm. So that's the one in our book. Even all the language is based on Roy Thomas's language. We have that. We have a thing we're doing with this company called Zest World. Sort of like Substack, but not really. It's because it's based on only with comic book people. You'll hear about it in the next week or two. We're going to be doing that, which is like a subscription-based thing with a lot of comics involved. So it's kind of cool. She's working on, let's try to think what she has upstairs. She's working on some covers and some stuff for video game companies. Amanda does a lot of odd jobs. Like a lot of her work is in a lot of odd places. So it's not always comics. We did some work for the Pepsi Cola company, which you'll see in a couple of months on cans, maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. When you do that stuff, you never know what's going to happen to it. But comics-wise, we've been working on our own things. So in a couple of weeks, you'll see like some of the stuff we've been working on. I can't talk about it yet, but it'll be like very Jimmy and Amanda type characters. We're doing a little craziness. But we're basically trying to focus everything on our own creator stuff, our own IP, and and characters. We're both at the stage now. We don't feel like we have to hustle as hard. Remember Harley, we were doing 2 books a month. We were writing 2 books a month because it came out every twice a month. And we were writing an annual or a special. So we were writing 3 books a month, plus we were doing Starfire. And,
wow.
So we did that for a couple of years. I mean, Harley, they put in 3 giant omnibuses of 800 pages each. We did a lot of Harley. We did a lot of books. So we're trying to take it a little easier and try to do some conventions, get out and do some cons now that COVID's kind of calmer. The world, thank God for that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's tired of that crap. So more cons, but definitely in a couple of weeks we're gonna announce some stuff with the Zest World guys, and hopefully get people to commit to some stuff we're doing. We're trying new things. That's what we're always trying. And Paper Films is my site, and I'm still doing a Kickstarter. The next Kickstarter we're doing is a Amanda Connor sketchbook. So we never did one of those. So we're doing a hardcover of mostly the naughty and nice kind of work of hers. A lot of adult stuff.
Nice. Where's that?
So it's gonna be a Kickstarter in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice.
And
I saw that on your Instagram. I think you did a little preview today.
We do it, and we have a mailer at Paper Films that we do. We don't bug you. We do like once a month. We let people know where we're gonna be, what we're up to, and then we show some art Amanda's working on and stuff. It's not a hard sell. Our mailer, you literally only get like 14 a year, so it's not like...
Hey, welcome back. So that was our interview with Jimmy Palmiotti. Really cool New York guy, right? I felt very comfortable talking to him. Again, one of those interviews that I think we could have spoken to him for hours, and he was very willing to do so. Very friendly guy. And, he has some stuff coming out in the next few months, so we hopefully will be able to get him back and talk to him about that as well.
I thought it was so cool that he and Dan DiDio basically grew up next to each other, reading comics together. Imagine, that brain trust growing up and their love of comics. So that was a really cool story.
Yeah, Jimmy was an open book. Loved talking to him. Would love to have him back on. He did sort of allude to maybe coming back on and bringing his lovely and talented wife, Amanda Connor, on too, which would be spectacular. So we'll all cross our fingers collectively for that. But until next time, this has been Dollar Bin Bandits, and we'll check you out later.